Welcome back to the Relocation Rundown, everybody. I'm Aaron,
I'm Geoff.
and we are the Aaron and Geoff team at Compass, your New York City real estate experts.
I am really pleased to have a dear friend join us this time.
I'm also pleased.
I guess we're both pleased to be here with the amazing Yudi Kaufman of Yudi Kaufman Design Associates. And I'm so happy that you're here to tell us, well, I guess to start a little bit about yourself and maybe how you got into design.
Well, thank you so very much. I'm delighted to be here with you boys as well. Thanks for inviting me on. I'm really looking forward to chatting with you and sharing what I know. Hi, I'm Yudi Kaufman. For those who don't know me, my design firm is Yudi Kaufman Design Associates, and I focus on residential interior design in and around the New York City kind of like metro area. Well, how did I get into design? Well, it all started when I was a kid growing up in New York City and looking at the architecture of the city. I actually was raised in the boroughs, and as a teenager, I would come into Manhattan any chance I got, literally just to like gaze at architecture. I love New York City. I love skyscrapers. I love the fact that we mix like really old structures with super ultra modern structures. And so that's where it all started. I had to go through a bunch of steps in my life to get to where I am now. But long story short, I ended up I actually started my career in business management and accounting. And after realizing how good I was at that, but also how much I hated it, I was like, I really should probably go back to school and focus on my passion and spend my life doing something that I love doing. Architecture wasn't quite for me, although I have a really deep understanding of it. But I really am I'm an interior designer. And so I went to FIT in New York, Fashion Institute of Technology. You know, as a kid growing up in New York City, like that was like the ultimate goal. And I had to work really hard to get in because I did not have a portfolio to show for myself, having been raised in Orthodox Jew and gone to yeshivas my whole life, where art and that sort of extracurricular stuff was not something that was part of the programming or encouraged. So I sort of DIY'd the whole thing. I got into FIT. I did my undergraduate degree there, and then I'm a glutton for punishment, so I stayed for another 2 years and got I got my master's in sustainable interior environments, also from FIT. That's how it began. Here we are. Here we are, 10 plus years later.
Exactly. That's great. Can we talk about like what that really means, like sustainable interior environments? Like, is that like working with sustainable materials? Is that like energy efficiency? Like, what does that really mean?
So yes, yes, and then some.
Great.
Really, sustainability is such a wide breadth of areas in which you can talk about or focus on. And in the program, we learned a lot of different things. But I actually, I couldn't tell you why, but somehow I ended up writing my thesis on water conservation. Um, but that's the breadth of this topic, is that you can really you know, as it relates specifically to what I do now with interior design, water conservation is not, especially in a residential environment, water conservation is not like a number one thing that comes up, or a number two or three thing. It doesn't really come up very much. But sustainable avenues that do come up in residential design are materials, paint, construction related things, recycling, upcycling, mixing vintage items with newer items, reupholstering pieces of furniture versus purchasing new pieces, sourcing materials and sourcing furnishings that are made domestically or locally versus overseas. All of those things have an impact on the environment at a different scale. And
I want to drill down on that because you just listed a whole bunch of different avenues where you may be helping a client, right? Not only in deciding what paint color palette to go with, but which paints to be using as far as chemical compound may be concerned. Talking
yeah, it's
about like,
interesting. It's interesting that you brought that up, actually, because I was just having this conversation with a client recently where I described a very specific paint that they should use for painting the base molding and the doors. And it's like a very weird like name. And so I had to like spell it out for them. And they were just like looking at me cross-eyed. And I was like, It's because we used to use an oil-based paint for this because it's more durable. But then we realized that's really not sustainable and it's not really good for our health and it's not really good for the contractors who are installing it and painting. And so now we've developed a water-based version of the same thing. So it's just as effective. It gives you the same effect. It's as high quality and durable, but it's a lot less toxic.
So, I mean, again, it's a huge breadth of information and different kind of areas where you have to be a specialist. How do you sort of manage a client through understanding what it is that you're offering? Because it sounds like it could be so many different things as far as what an interior designer is going to do for a client.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The sustainability aspect of what I have studied is actually called into conversation less than people might think. When it comes to interior design, let's talk about like what it is that I offer people, right? Because I can do a lot of different things. I can help my clients with a lot of different things. But, in a kind of nutshell, it's helping them plan out their home, plan out the layout of their home, identify the right furnishings, identify the right finishes if we're doing construction, the right kind of flooring, the right kind of lighting and things like that. And then, creating the vibe and the mood and all of that. And I like to do this, like I like to design holistically. And so I very rarely can just like walk into a room and say, okay, let's do this and that. I have to start from scratch. I have to get to know who my client is. Probably much like you guys in selling real estate, like you need to understand who your client is and what their needs are before you can show them a place. Because otherwise they're going to be unhappy, right? And they're the ones that are buying it, so they need to get what they need. So it's very similar in my field where I really have to understand who you are, who's living there, how is the space going to be used? Do you entertain a lot? Do you order in a lot? Do you cook a lot? Are there kids that we need to consider? Are there pets that we need to consider? All of these things come into play on a regular basis. These are the kinds of things that I start every project doing is deep dive learning who my client is.
So, for yourself, who had to make a big sort of transition from New York City to, I guess we'll call it the country where you are now, Putnam
We could
County.
call it the Hudson Valley.
The
Sure.
country. Out in the burbs. What was that like for you as a designer, kind of redesigning your life from New York City style living to something a little different?
Also, as someone who grew up in New York City, like your whole life, like how did that transition go for you?
There's a lot to unpack there, and I'll do the best I can to cover as many of those questions as I can right now. But in terms of kind of like mentally transitioning from being a city boy to country living, that was something that happened before I moved even. It started with the pandemic, right? So let's rewind. I was born in Brooklyn. I was raised in the boroughs. I lived in Manhattan for like 15 years before we actually left the city.
Which borough did you grow up in?
But, details. It's okay. Like, let's focus on the things that matter, right? Um, so, when the pandemic hit in 2020, I was lucky enough that my husband Adam, his parents owned a vacation house in the Poconos. And so they were going to be staying during like lockdown and everything. They stayed in their home in Long Island and they kind of left us to live in their vacation house in the Poconos. So that was kind of like what started this whole process because prior to that, you would not have caught me dead ever talking about living outside of New York City. But what happens is that like, when things slow down, when the world shuts down and you're like stuck at home and you're actually like living in a room that has like that's like scaled to like humans and has like windows that face sky and trees instead of brick walls. And like, you have a driveway that you can pull right into to unload your groceries. Like you start to get accustomed to all this stuff and you're like, wait a second, I can be comfortable living like a regular person instead of like a crazy New York City person. And I say that with a lot of love because I love New York City and I love the crazy people that live there. I
Oh,
consider myself one of those people, only I keep my craziness out in the country. So that's what started the ball rolling for me. And then a series of other unfortunate events sort of like pushed us to have to leave our apartment before we were like fully ready, but that like lit a fire. It got us going. We got our mortgage pre-approval. We started looking. We begged, borrowed, and stole to make ends meet to make it work. But then we finally did it. We found our home. We made that transition, and then and like I said, so for me, it started, during the pandemic, like mentally, like the idea of living outside of the city. One of the big things for me was also like living with the proximity to the city such that I could still be in the city as often as I wanted. I wasn't about to like pick up and move all the way up the Hudson Valley, all the way up into the country where it was going to become like cumbersome to be in the city. So like where I am now, I'm an hour and change from Manhattan. It's an easy hop in and out anytime I need to. But that's me. That's my experience. In terms of like getting a home set up, being an interior designer for as long as I have been and working with the designers that I did, I was fortunate enough to start kind of like a furniture collection, if you will, over the many years. So things that I would come like that like I would be able to like buy showroom samples, like high-end really expensive showroom samples at a fraction of the price. I would go to auctions where things were being sold at next to nothing. I was running furniture showrooms where showroom samples would need to be like kind of like offloaded, and it was like cheaper to give it away than it was to try to sell it at that point. Collect these things up, and I mentioned that lovely vacation Poconos house that my in-laws have. And so their basement became my storage facility where I amassed a collection of rugs, case goods, tables, chairs, accessories, light fixtures, all sorts of things, so that when it came time for me to move into my house, I was able to furnish it pretty much with what I had collected over the years. And it was a really weird and cool design process for me to have to literally design only with what I had. And so I sort of took everything that I'd collected and like shook it up and laid it out, and it just worked in like the coolest way.
How does it differ from your apartment in the city, design wise?
My apartment in the city was a like small shoebox apartment that we squeezed whatever we could, like whatever this big life that we both lead, we squeezed it into that apartment and just made it work. Every decision was based on like, does it fit and can we live around it? Whereas now it's so different, right? We have space, we have comfort, we have natural light, we have trees. And so, my personal aesthetic leans into like a mid-century modern with like kind of like glammy moments to really like make things a little bit more sparkly. Mid-century modern tends to be like more muted tones. I'll push that envelope a bit. I'll add some like details that are more unexpected. And yeah, that's where I'm at right now. That's my home.
I want to talk a little bit about the difference between designing around the collection that you had versus designing from scratch, or even when you're working with a client who's got to kind of figure out how to go almost in the opposite direction from you, from the big house where they've collected to the apartment that they're downsizing into. How do you work through that with somebody? I mean, obviously, it's a very different experience.
Well, it's different and it's the same. And I'll also expand upon your question and say it's also true, even if you're not downsizing into a small apartment in the city, but you might just be downsizing out in burbs, right? You might be living in a 20,000 square foot mega mansion and be downsizing to a 5,000 square foot, home.
McMansion.
Yeah. Or what was the other thing I wanted to say? Yeah, I mean, it works both ways also, because even when you're living in the city, in your micro living, and you move outside of the city, there are a lot of similar questions that you're going to ask. And that is, what do you take with you? What do you take with you? What's worth it? What makes sense? What's worth the expense of moving? If you're talking about moving cross country, moving is a big expense. It's a big part of the buying process, right? So I think for me, it comes down to value, right? What is valuable? And value means what is like financially like valuable, like what did you invest a lot of money in. And a value is also what is like sentimental value, right? Like what is the thing that you've had all your life that you've taken with you to every apartment you've ever lived in that you want to continue to live with, right? Obviously some of it comes down to like, will it fit, right? Like if you have this like crazy large living room and a huge sectional and you want to try and fit that into your tiny little New York City apartment,
Are you
like
trying to say something about my sectional couch?
I wasn't thinking about yours, but that is a great example, right? You guys have a really large sectional, but it fits, right? It works and it makes your living room feel really big. And I love that. I actually love doing big pieces of furniture to make the room feel bigger. But you also got to balance that line of like not overwhelming the room to where it feels crowded and stuffed.
And when we bought that, we said that's probably not going to fit in our next apartment.
But one of the nice things about sectionals is that they come in pieces, right? So
That's true.
like that, and that's the way I think too, right? So it's like, well, can you take the whole sectional, or maybe we only take some of the parts of the sectional and it becomes a smaller sectional. There are also tricks in the industry where like, we can have there's like a company called, I think they're called Sofa Doctor, and they are exactly that. They perform surgery on furniture. Okay. So like if your sofa is too big, like it's usually more of an issue of like you can't get it into the elevator, or it doesn't fit around the curve in the staircase. They will literally come and they will on site unstitch the seams. They will cut the frame. They will fold it down however they need to get it through the door.
And then they'll put it back together.
Yes. And I am one of those crazy people that did that, just that for myself when I was living in the city. I was redoing my bedroom and I wanted a grand headboard that was 8.5 feet tall. Um, which, as you can imagine, doesn't fit in your average New York City staircase. I was living in a walk up at the time. It probably wouldn't have fit. It probably wouldn't have fit in your average New York City elevator either.
Probably not.
How did it
And
fit in the
so
door?
sideways through the door on its side, but getting around
Okay.
the bends and the turns, that's where it became an issue. But you know what? I budgeted for that. I knew when I was buying it that it wasn't going to fit through the door. And so I budgeted dollars to spend having it basically cut down to get through the door. They then reassemble it, restitch it, knock in all the nails. And so it was fully how I wanted it. And then I paid for it the same thing to happen on the way out. They came on moving day, they unstitched everything again, cut it in the same spots it was cut before, and then right there out on the street before it got loaded into the truck, they rebuilt it.
Did you have to cut
Now,
it down again to get it into your new home?
no, the thing is, like, when you're living out of the city, you have like bigger doorways and more access points and fewer stairs. And I'm lucky in that I live in a home, as you know, that has like doors everywhere. I have porches everywhere. So there's direct access into pretty much every room right from outside. So the headboard had to be carried around to the back of the house and and went straight into the bedroom. It
That
never
makes
would have fit down the staircase in this house, though.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's an extreme case. It is doable. I've done it before. I've done it for myself. I've done it for clients. I've done it with sofas. But yeah, the point is that like I like to think outside the box. And so like if you guys were moving and you said to me like we really love our sectional, but we're not sure it's going to fit in this new place, I would say, well, why don't we like can choose and ditch some of the pieces so that you can still keep this sectional that you love, but it's a smaller version of it.
What are your biggest tips for renters who want to find a way to make their home feel designed for them, but also want to get that security deposit back at the end of the day?
Right.
You know, the security deposit is exactly the answer to that question, right? And the answer is think about what your budget is, think about what you're willing to do, right? You're not going to necessarily be like gutting the kitchen and knocking down walls, but a paint job makes a huge difference in how we live. White walls seem okay at the onset, but the truth is that after you're living in a white box for too long, it starts to eat at you emotionally. And so The way I see it is invest money into painting, and you can do that different ways, right? You can hire a professional painter, you can hire a handyman, or even sometimes the super of the building, or you could even do it yourself, depending on your budget. Do it before you move in, because once your furniture is there, once all of your belongings are there, it's much, much harder.
Yeah,
And
that
then well, yeah, that you see exactly like right behind
yeah.
you, just like the bookshelf and the TV and
Mhm.
the sound bar and the cabinet.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of moving that would have to happen at this stage in the game. But if that room was painted before you moved in and you guys even did it yourself, it would be an afternoon. You buy a couple of pies of pizza and a few cases of beer, invite some of your closest friends, not me, sorry, and paint that room real quick, right? So you asked about the security deposit, right? Well, if you paint it back when you leave, there's no reason they wouldn't give you your security deposit back. Or if you're willing to forego the security deposit, if you've budgeted for that, then you just walk out like I did.
Yeah.
Are there other
But I want to say this also, fix, another easy fix, but that is also so critical and so important is lighting. Okay. Light fixtures can make or break your experience of life and the room. Light fixtures and dimmers. Okay. And those are things that are often not going to lose you your security deposit because you're investing in an upgrade in the unit. And also, like they're an easy swap, right? Like you don't necessarily need to hire an electrician. You actually could probably just Google it and learn how to like install the fixture yourself. You don't have to spend a lot of money. You could spend a lot of money if you want, and then you could take that fixture with you when you move. Or you could just buy like nice-ish stuff, from like a Home Depot type place that just is better than what you have now. And it upgrades everything and makes a big difference. You could put in smart bulbs that allow you to dim, or you could change out the actual light switch to a dimmer switch. Both of those things are not terribly costly, but they make a huge difference.
I want to do some rapid fire questions.
Ooh.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to give you two things, something versus another thing, and you have to pick and tell us which one you would go with.
Ooh.
Okay. So first, furniture first or layout first?
Layout.
Okay.
Do you want
Sourcing.
me to expand upon that, or do you just want the?
Yeah, I want you
I'll,
to
I'll
yeah.
say I'll say a little bit about that. Okay. The layout dictates the furniture you need, right? Like what size sofa do you need? I don't know. Let's go buy a sofa, right? You buy the sofa and you get it there, and all of a sudden you need to hire a sofa doctor because it doesn't fit, right? Layout has to come first so that you know where's the sofa going, how many sofas, is it a sofa or is it a sectional? Is it one chairs or is it two chairs? Is it a small coffee table? Is a big coffee table? Like you got to do the layout first in order to know what you're buying and buying the right things. Now, granted, you could have certain things that like you have already that you do want to design with that you want incorporated into the new layout. We've done that before, but generally speaking, layout comes first.
Sourcing local or shipping?
Well, if you're asking the guy who graduated with his master's in sustainable interior design, I would say local. But if you're asking the like designer who wants no limits, I would say wherever, like source wherever. And the honest answer is I do source wherever. I've ordered fabulous custom pieces made overseas that take many months of lead time and more recently have been hit with tariffs upon entry, which was really frustrating, obviously. But I've also sourced locally, so it's a little bit of everything. Some from column A, some from column B.
I was like, where's column A? Is that in Greece?
Should we go there after Mykonos?
So dumb.
Say my name at the door and you get a good seat.
How do you help clients figure out, how do you create a comfortable psychological zone for them to really explore, maybe pushing themselves out of their design comfort zone? How do you make them feel cozy in taking that leap?
So it starts with what I mentioned before about how I start a project, which is getting to know my client. I have to know who my client is and what they love and what they hate and how they function. Well, I joke, I have a plaque on my desk. I should have brought it here that says, I'm not your therapist. But the real truth is, I am very much my client's therapist.
It's relatable.
I'm sure it is, right? I think we've spoken about this before, right? They really should be teaching psychology 101 in design school and probably in real estate like programs also. And they don't. But what we do is definitely like you're involved in someone's most intimate spaces, their home. You have to be able to understand them, how they function, what they need, what they don't need. And so that really dictates a lot of that. There is no one right answer to your question about how do I pull somebody out of their comfort zone. It really depends on who they are and what what their needs are, what their wants are, what their restrictions and limitations are.
Obviously, when you're working with clients, you design for them and what their wants and needs are. But there are all kinds of trends that people tend to find, be it through social media or television, etc. Are there any design trends that are a particular pet peeve of yours or something that you think is just not going to last?
So there's a difference between a design trend and something that is trendy, right? So design trends are things that are more evergreen that are come into play when you're designing. And something that is trendy is something that like everybody is putting in now, and then like in 2 years is going to be like, well, you obviously designed that in 2025 because you did that thing that everybody was doing then. Those things change so frequently. It's hard to say like what is a one specific thing, but like, I think like an obvious one for me is like the gold finish on everything. I think that if you put like like a satin brass finish on every single piece of metal that goes into your house, like yes, people will know that you designed that in the 2020s because everybody was doing that. I like to incorporate gold because I actually really like that. That's part of my personal aesthetic, but it has to be done in a way that is, what am I trying to say? Find, right? You
A
have to pick and
highlight
choose,
opposed to like,
use it as a highlight versus an everything.
yeah.
Like, like the sort of like Instagram kitchen, like the white kitchen with gold hardware and a farmhouse sink. It's like everybody's gonna know you designed that from Instagram. So I would avoid things like that. I like to make things, tailored to you. What are the things that you like? What are the colors you like? What are the textures you like? And how can I elevate that? So it's really tailored and custom and different for everybody.
What's your one piece of
And
advice?
that will never be, sorry to interrupt you. That will never go out of fashion because that is so you. It's designed for you and what you love, and you will live with that for a long time.
So you're a big proponent of designing for what you like versus designing for maybe what you think looks good, but you don't really love it. You know what I mean?
I never like to design something that I don't love. So I
Yeah.
have to love it too. There are definitely cases where I will specify something that I don't personally love in my own home, but that I still love. And it's still a beautiful thing. So I want to design for you, for my client. I want to design for what my client loves, but I will elevate that and make sure that it is something that is timeless and beautiful.
Do you ever have to tell your client, like, try again? That's really
Mm.
ugly. We're not going to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't use those words. I just try to guide them towards the thing that they should want. Um, I'll I was talking about this with someone recently where I will purposely include things like when I'm showing clients, let's say fabrics, right? I'll purposely include some fabrics that I know they're going to say no to, right? Like give them something to say no to because it empowers them to say yes to the other thing, right? And then sometimes they want the thing that they were supposed to say no to, and it's all about guiding them towards the other thing. Every now and again you get a happy accident in there where like they insist on wanting the thing you wanted them to say no to, so that changes things. You have to rethink a couple of things to make sure that works, and then it comes out spectacular and you just weren't expecting it. But it's never going to be like a yes to something that's hideous. Never. I won't let you waste your money though.
I won't stand for it.
Yeah, really. I'm pretty
Um,
particular.
pretty particular. This has been awesome. I love talking to you about design and homes and furniture and real estate. It's just so fun every time. And I just love your perspective on things. So
Thank you.
thank you for joining us on the relocation rundown.
Before we go,
Mhm.
can you give everybody one more time, like who you are and where they can find you if they want to reach out?
Sure. I'm Yudi Kaufman. My design firm is Yudi Kaufman Design Associates. You can find me on Instagram at Yudi Kaufman, or you can check out my website, www.yudikaufman.com.
And if you go to his website today and enter code relocation, you'll get 50% off nothing. I'm making that up on the spot. Yuri,
No,
this has
but
been
depending on when you do see this or hear this, if you're listening to this in December of 2025, you should go to my website because there are sales running through the end of this month. So check it out. Great design is for everybody. You deserve it too, and we have packages at every level. So
all
treat
right.
yourself.
I
Awesome.
love it.
Love it. Well, this has been the relocation rundown, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.